What's going on, everybody? My name is Hassiem Muhammad, and you are listening to The Actor's Instrument. Today, we're going from Broadway to the West End with today's guest, Gordon Greenberg. A few months ago, I caught Gordon's play, Dracula, a comedy of terrors off Broadway. The show featured a dear friend of mine, and it was genuinely hilarious. And truthfully, I saw the show and I immediately reached out to Gordon to see if I could get him onto the podcast to discuss his process. Gordon has directed on Broadway, off Broadway, in London's West End, written for television and stage, and developed, directed, and produced new works for arts institutions across America. Some of his current directing and writing projects include The Heart of Rock and Roll on Broadway, the aforementioned and recently closed show Dracula, a comedy of terrors, which he directed and co wrote with Steve Rosen, a new musical about Picasso, the NBC television series Most Talkative, Crime and Punishment, a comedy for the Old Globe, a London revival of The Baker's Wife, which just opened last week, Single White Female, The Wedding Banquet, Ghost Tour the Play, and the new comedy podcast series Rolling Calls, starring Julie Howson and Richard Kind, which he co wrote again with Steve Rosen. Gordon clearly has his hand in many pots across the industry, and I'm very excited to have him on the show today. Gordon, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry it's taken us the better part of a year to connect.
Listen, better late than never. Better late than
Indeed.
never.
No, I'm happy to see you. And at least we know that our intentions are good because we kept up the
Exactly.
correspondence.
100%. 100%. And look, I think this is a valuable lesson to people listening. I'll jump right into it. Some people ask me, how do you get these guests on the show? And quite literally, I just reach out. um, I found you on Instagram, sent you a DM, genuinely just let you know how much I appreciated the show. And then, just asked if you'd be willing to come on. And so I appreciate that you were willing to take a message for someone you've never met before, have absolutely no relation to. Um, and yeah, it just gave me the time of day. I appreciate that.
I mean, it's always nice when someone says something nice about your work. You assume, like, when you have a show up in New York, you're just getting hundreds and hundreds of messages, but you're not really. I mean, I'm
Mm,
sure some people think it, but it's for that reason that whenever I see a friend of mine in a show, I really do make a point of, even though I can't always wait until after the show and see them, just sending a text, even if it's just one sentence. Fantastic work. I'm so proud to know you. Keep it up. It's
yeah.
just a nice little pep in your step,
Yeah.
because it's hard. It's hard to do. And sometimes you feel like you're speaking into a vacuum. So just to know that it's reaching people and hopefully making people's day even a tiny bit better, or giving them a tiny bit of emotional intelligence, you feel like, oh, there's a purpose to what I do. It's not just um, for my own, you know, enjoyment.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and I saw the show because a very close friend of mine, Jordan Boatman, uh, was in it, and
Well,
so
Jordan happens to be like one of the most delightful surprises of, the decade for me.
mm,
Everyone that saw it, I don't want this to just become a Jordan Love Fest, but it's hard not to. Every single person refers to her as the British person in the cast. They all think she's
really,
the real Brit, because nobody was British in that cast. Even though we are
wow,
doing it in London, we're just starting to cast it now, with actual
nice.
British people. But they're like, of course, the British lady will do it back home. And I said, who's the British lady? No British lady. There's Jordan's from Westchester.
Yeah, that's actually hilarious. I'm gonna tell her. She probably already knows. You probably told her, but yeah, Jordan. I don't know. She's like one of those. I don't know. In some ways, she's unassuming.
Yeah, that's also what makes her so easy to work with, and
Yeah,
she comes in uh, without any fear, I should say. I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure there's fear on a certain level, but generally, when you give someone uh, a thought to do something with, and if they freeze up or tense up, it's fear, right? Because you may
hmm,
not have an immediate understanding of where to put that idea. um, and it works the same on every level in any direction. An actor might say to a director, I don't understand why am I opening the coffin right now? Why on a human level would I do this? And I
Yeah.
could say, it doesn't matter, just do it because I said it. And that's not a great answer. I'm sure my parents said it to me many times, but I instead, it took me a while to understand that it's okay to say, I'm not sure. Let's figure it out together.
Mm.
And the same way for an actor to say, I'm I'm not sure what to do with that, but just let me sit with it for a minute, and I'll let you know.
I saw there's a Dracula podcast. Did it start as a podcast, or was that after you'd written the the play?
So the whole history of the play is Steve and I had written a Christmas show that started at Bucks County Playhouse in Pennsylvania. They were every season they had asked me to direct a Christmas show. I don't know why I'm Jewish. I end up doing all these Christmas shows. I had done Holiday Inn. I never even had a Christmas tree. But it takes someone who doesn't have to celebrate Christmas to fall in love with it, because it's all I see is the great parts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't see the bills and the family squabbles and all of that. But
Yeah.
I said, next time, can I just write one? I have an idea. And so Steve rose, and I went to Steve and I said, what if we take A Christmas Carol and adapt it for that theater and make it about a guy from Buckinghamshire, which is what Bucks County was named after, who moved to America in the late part of the 19th century to make his fortune. And he somehow screwed up with the love of his life, said the wrong thing, and she decided not to come with him. And he spent the rest of his life regretting it. And in order to make up for it, he ends up turning over his offices at the end when he has this redemption, this, sort of um, catharsis, and giving them to the local caroling group and saying, make a theater for yourselves. And that's the theater you're sitting in now. And that becomes the origin story. So
Mm.
we did it there. And then Barry Edelstein, who runs the Old Globe, saw it and he said, we're looking for a show. They've been doing The Grinch there for like 30 years. Every Christmas. I love The Grinch, and so does San Diego, because it's supporting all the Shakespeare that they do there. Like right
Mm.
now he condensed Henry V, the three parts of it. Or is it the
Oh
sixth?
wow.
Henry VI. That's the one
6.
no one does. You know better than me. But he made it into two parts, and they're doing it now all summer in rep. So these
Okay.
kinds of projects are expensive and are not always the hottest ticket. Um, and so this supports that. And he said, we want to do another Christmas show. And can you adapt it? So we rewrote that show to take place in California, which is nutty. And it did quite well. And a man named Andrew Cato, who runs a theater in Florida called the Maltz Jupiter, um, wanted to commission a play. And he said, I love that you guys are doing that. Could you do something like that with Dracula? I always thought that would be fun. And because I'm a yes person, I just said, oh, yes. And then without even thinking about it. And then I thought about, why? What am I doing? Why would I do this? And I sort of, I just thought someone wants it. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
figure out a why and why this is necessary. And I went to Steve and we worked on it for a good long time. And we did a first draft, a first version of it down in Florida, which was great. And then we kept thinking about it, went to Chicago Shakes and did a workshop of it there. And they asked some more really tough questions. And then the world shut down. And uh, I immediately said, we've got the show, we've got the soundtrack. Like, it had been designed, beautiful sound design, and nobody's working. Let's make this and make it as a benefit for the Actors Fund. So we got this insane cast. And as opposed to on stage where we have five actors, well, really four actors playing a billion parts and one actor playing Dracula, in
Mm-hmm.
this we had, I don't know, 20 something actors, because everyone played an individual role.
Sure.
Uh, and it was everyone from John Stamos, Laura Benanti, Annalie Ashford, Alex Brightman, James Monroe Iglehart, um, you name it, just
Man,
all the
heavy
greats.
hitters. Yeah.
And it was a total blast. And to be honest, it saved my mental health in
Mm.
that first 4 months where everyone was in a panic and didn't know what to do. I said, let's pour all our energy into this, and we're going to meet every morning at 10 a.m. on Zoom and plan this. And that's what we did. And we put all our stuff in. And Dory Berenstein, who runs the Broadway Podcast Network, um, sponsored it and helped us produce it and put it all together. And once people like Ashley Park and James Iglehart and all those kind of people start saying yes, you're everyone else, it just became like a cascade. Then everyone else just said yes. Also,
Mm,
because what else were they doing? But it
mhm,
was it was really fun. And then that became almost a marketing tool for us doing it on stage. And Dory was our executive producer. Um, Drew and Dane Productions, Drew Desky and Dane Levins, who are just wonderful guys, co-producers on Little Shop, were fans of the show, and we'd been talking about it in the abstract before the pandemic because they had come down to Florida to see it and really enjoyed it. But it all galvanized as things were getting better, and once they saw how popular the podcast was, New World Stages became the idea. At first, it wasn't, and they we created a limited run, and we brought in. We also, I should say, did more work on it because once that was set, we then did a capital rep in beautiful Albany, New York, where I kind of have directed for like 20 years, and they're lovely
mm,
people. And then we went up to a fabulous theater called the Seagull Center in Montreal,
mhm,
only because the artistic director there, I had directed a show called P.F. Dietrich there a few years ago, and we stayed in touch. I love her. She's super loyal and wonderful, and her father happens to live near that theater in Florida, and he saw Dracula. This is how arbitrary it all is. And he
yeah.
saw it and said, "There's a really funny show. It's smart." So she said, "I want to know more about it." And then they agreed to do it. And as we worked on it, I understood the show more and more each time. I understood dramaturgically. That's what's so great about directing and co writing, that I got to a point where I just knew that some of the vertebrae, it's like a spine, were out of alignment. And Steve at the time was in Seattle working on National Lampoon's Broadway Vacation, which is a show he's writing separately. So his head was kind of full, but I would call him every time I had an aha moment to say, we have three scenes with Lucy and Dracula, and they're in the wrong order. He tells her everything right away. We're giving away the shop too quickly. It needs to
Mm,
build, and she needs to keep him away and build the tension until they finally kiss. And then when she goes along with it, it has to be clear that she's faking it. Um, it's just each time something occurred to me, the show got better and better. And so by Canada, I was able to do a lot of the work. And I also had done a good deal of digging on Bram Stoker, who wrote the original. And I found out that he was pretty queer, um,
oh.
to use a modern word. Um, and I believe he was married, but he had this epistolary relationship with Oscar Wilde and with Walt Whitman. And um, if you look in the book, I went back and saw passages like when Harker first arrives at Dracula's castle, he's surrounded by all these female vampires that are like in his lair. It's like Hugh Hefner or, Diddy and his
Yeah.
girls. It's like he has a party house basically. And he's one of those guys who I just more and more reminded me of someone who, the way we describe it is like someone who's eaten too much dessert and like they just have not
Yeah.
had a salad in years. And it's like, all I do is party, all I do is party. And those flames burn bright, but they burn out fast. And
Mm,
imagine if it never burned out. And that's what Dracula is. He's just been doing it, doing it, doing it, hitting it hard for thousands of years. But Harker shows up and all of the girls are like, fresh blood. We want him. And he says, no, 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 he's mine. At one point,
mm,
and I just thought, oh, that's interesting. And you could read it different ways, but it clearly there were a number of those little breadcrumbs that led us to believe it's worth kind of leaning into and seeing where it goes. So
sure.
we finally said, this is not just about a bored party guy. This is about a Gen Z pansexual vampire, who is a bored party guy who's kind of looking for the next thrill and is sick of chasing the same dopamine hits. And what it ends up being by the end of the show is being normal. And that's at the end,
Right.
he finally realizes what I want is just to be normal, like you and Jonathan, to have this relationship where sometimes you go to bed at 9:30, and sometimes you just sit and stare at the wall together and read a book or knit. Like,
Yeah.
not every night is the Super Bowl.
Something that's been a recurring theme on this show is the power that actors have to create their own work. But I was recently talking to some colleagues of mine, and I was like, I think it's important to distinguish the difference between, maybe you're self-producing something because it's just a passion project, you've always wanted to do it, versus executive producing something where the goal is to make money, you're putting in to get out. um, or line producing where you're like, no, I'm really good at like bringing a team together, and I'm really good at making sure that we see this thing from beginning to end. I say this because I notice you have quite a few, more than anyone else I've had on the show. You have quite a few co-writing credits.
Steve, when because we're so close, and um, I trust him implicitly. I mean, he's not a director. He's the first one to say that. He's an actor, writer, and composer, and he kind of does everything. He will sit in the rehearsal room, certainly in the big, for New York, he was there 80% of the time. And I would look at him frequently to say, this isn't working. Why isn't it working? But he'll let me like take the pass, which is sort of the same when you're writing. Like sometimes something is going underneath the skin, like you're getting to something that's weird and soulful and not ABCD logical. And I'll say, I just have a thought now. Can you just not talk to me for 20 minutes? Let me just get this out. I'm going to spew it out, and then you can pick at it. Or he'll do the same thing. Like, I know how to make this funny. Just let me write 20 lines and
Yeah.
then back to me.
Yeah. No, this idea of like co-creating is just fascinating to me because, in those examples of the different kinds of producers, I know some actors are like, I just want to act. I didn't sign up for this to create my own work. And, but the industry's shifting. And so I just like to encourage actors to say, like, well, hey, you don't have to be like the most originally creative person. Like, if you have an idea and you have a friend who's a writer, like, you can come together and you can collaborate and make something without all that pressure being just on you. So yeah, I was just,
100%.
yeah. So I
You,
was just
what you're
curious about your process in that.
I love that you're asking that question. It's such a good one, and it's something I think about a lot because when I was an actor, in the Paleolithic era, of the late '90s, I always wanted to do many things, and people around me, like I remember being in How to Succeed, like the two revivals ago, the one with Matthew Broderick, and I was playing a small part and understudying, and it seemed to me that if you did anything more than just act, people would think of you as somehow less of an artist.
Yeah.
Like, what? You're working in a publicity firm? And I'm like, what do you mean? I want to learn about the world. I worked in an art gallery. I worked all over. But I was someone who was like, I'm not going to just work 3 hours a day. Like, I want to do
Yeah.
more. Um, and I was writing. I was just trying to figure out who I was. Nowadays, I feel like if you're only acting, you're it's not that there's a problem, but I think people see the opportunities that exist for you, and partially because the barriers to entry are lower. Like
Hmm.
social media means anyone can make a movie on their iPhone and put it on social media, and anyone who's really funny can make TikToks and get noticed, or we can all make podcasts. Um, but you know what? Doing it requires discipline, as you know,
Yep.
uh, and a belief in yourself and rocket fuel energy.
Absolutely.
And it never, I don't know, certainly not for me, it never becomes automatic. Like I feel like for every project I'm doing, I wake up, and if I don't have everything scheduled, I sort of look at my list of what I'm working on, and I just think, what do I need to advance today? What do I need to work on? Because we are our own, industries, right? So everything that you are acting, whether it's like, I want to look at Cymbeline and I'm going to go through those lines and try to decipher some more, get myself another level deeper, or I want to work on my podcast, get more people, or edit, or build a website, or write a play, or produce, or call and try to get the rights to Waiting to Exhale, or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
just like, now I'm just free associating things that I thought
But
about. But
But you're right. Like nobody. That's the thing about being an artist is like you could theoretically, I mean, as long as your bills are paid, sit around and do nothing. Like
yes, you could.
you have to be like nobody's gonna make you create something. Nobody's gonna make you sit down and write that play. You
Yeah,
know.
you could be in a you could, if you're in a Broadway show, you're not rich, but you're making enough to survive.
Yeah.
It's just when it ends, you need another plan. So I always recommend like having a life plan for that. But you're right, you could be a bartender 3 nights a week and make enough to live,
Yeah.
and that's chill. That's cool. And I'm jealous of some people who can do that and find the beauty of just slowness, which is another, it's a skill I've not mastered. I definitely got better at it during the pandemic to some extent. Um, but that, agita, that like need to create, that I think is at the heart of a lot of, driven people. Whether it's
Yeah.
like, there was a line in Heart of Rock and Roll where somebody's interviewing Orville Mendoza is playing like an Elon Musk kind of bizarre character. And the interviewer says, childhood trauma, the motivator that never fails, which is true. Like everyone's got something to prove to
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
whether it's yourself or your family or the world or your old ex girlfriend or whoever it is. Um, and that's okay. That's what that's what progress is made of.
Yeah.
There's got to be some elbow grease in it. So I am all for people doing many things and looking for, you know, what is their talent? What is the talent that they can bring that they can work on and hone and contribute in a way that will be sort of uniquely valuable. It's like your
Mhm.
unique selling point. And people sometimes talk about, just follow your passion, which is great unless your talent lies elsewhere. Because if your passion
Ooh.
doesn't match your talent, you may not be able to buy dinner and pay your
Yeah.
rent.
Now,
Um,
you mentioned during the pandemic, that kind of gave you the impetus to create, like you go, go, go. I'm the exact same way. During the pandemic is when I produced my web series. It was my first time producing anything in my life. I learned a lot. And then during the strike is when I started this podcast. Like, I just can't, I'm most creative whenever there are things not going on, you know?
Changing. Everything is changing, and you know what? You're part of that change. You are like you're of that generation. You are of the generative generation, and not just interpretive. You're not. I'm sure you're picking up great scripts and learning from all the Shakespeare. You're doing everything, but at the same time, you're making new things, and the forward. That is you. The forward momentum. So it's amazing.
What's going on, everybody? Hassiem here. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. And if you haven't heard already, The Actor's Instrument is now a presentation of Red Letter Entertainment. We're excited to continue to bring you the best industry insights and introduce you to new artists who are making it work. And with this partnership with Red Letter, we're excited to bring you even more content, live episodes, and Q&As. New episodes of The Actor's Instrument will drop every Tuesday. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check us out at theactorsinstrument.com and follow Actors Instrument Podcast on all social media platforms so you never miss a beat.
Yeah. Now, I would love to chat about your work over the pond. For a lot of us, just, you know, being in one of the major markets here feels like this like massive undertaking. You're like a director without borders.
Well, the the London stuff really was something I kind of manifested. I love England. I love London, and so I've always kind of just put it out there. Like I'll go. And so I will say, quite frankly, that when you work in London, the pay is like less than half of what it is here, and you're not
Wow.
getting health insurance weeks if you're equity, or if you're SDC, which is the Directors Guild. We still need a certain amount of contributions to get health insurance. So there's that loss. So you have to factor that in and somehow subsidize yourself when you're there. However, um, obviously you still get paid, it's still a living wage, and you're being paid to be on a great adventure. The Taiwan thing happened really through mutual friends that just knew that I was a director and had seen some of the things I did. And one of them had purchased the rights to the movie The Wedding Banquet, which is a 90s film by Ang Lee, who made uh, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman and Brokeback Mountain. Massively talented and important filmmaker. And this is a movie that I remembered seeing when I was young, about a Taiwanese guy who comes to New York, and his parents think he's in med school, and he secretly drops out and goes into real estate, and they think he's dating a woman, but he's actually dating a man. And then his dad gets sick, and they come to New York for treatment, and he has to pretend like La Cage aux Folles that he's with a woman, even though there's a man involved. And in England, I had directed a few little things years and years ago, and had a great time. And then Guys and Dolls happened in a big way, because I had directed a tour here, a small tour, but the estate was very pleased with it. And I went to some producers there and I said, if you ask for the rights to Guys and Dolls right now and say that I'm going to direct it, the estate will grant you the rights. I think, because I believe they really, and it was a gamble. I just could tell that they were happy with what I'd done.
Sure.
And it worked. And we ended up running for a couple of years and touring, and Rebel Wilson was in it for a while, and it just became a really fun experience, an enlarging experience for me as a person and as a director. And then other opportunities came really out of that a little bit. But
Yeah.
it's not always bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You're going
Sure.
up. And then the next show I did was Barnum in a 200-seat theater there called the Chocolate Factory, which is a beautiful incubator for revivals and new musicals. And it's where the hit Merrily We Roll Along came from. And it's where Funny Girl, the not hit, then hit Funny Girl came from. And
Yeah.
lots of other shows. They've done so many wonderful productions that I love working there. And it's just a fun black box. And The Baker's Wife is there right now. And we've turned the theater into a 360 French village square. So there are buildings all around you and beautiful. There's trees everywhere you walk in, and it's dirt and cement, and you're there. And we pump lavender into the air, and there's an accordion player and a guitar player, and there are guys playing boules, like pétanque, like they play in those village squares in France. And it's really, really wonderful.
You mentioned that not every job is like bigger and better than the next, which as I'm getting further along in my career, I'm realizing that as well. Um, but what I think is really cool about what I hear from you is you have, you said part of it was manifesting, part of it was your relationships. You've truly gotten your hand into so many pots that it seems that kind of having this far reach, literally around the globe, keeps you busy. And in some ways, like, that's just so valuable in and of itself. The more people that know you, that know your work, that value your work, simply just the more calls you're going to get, or the more calls that you make get answered.
Totally. And I think, just keep coming up with ideas and knowing that you have unlimited ideas in you. Like that's always the fear, when you're really loving your take on a moment in a play, and the director comes up to you and says, I don't know that this is the way that's going to work best for at least how I see the show. Can we try doing it another way? Can you try being less sarcastic here and trying it earnest? I'm sure sometimes the impulse is to say, but it's great. What's wrong with it? It works. And then to which the director might say, yes, indeed, it works, but it can work 8,000 different ways. I just want to try another way. So it's knowing that and trusting that. I feel, like I always want to be a fountain, not a drain. So I'm always like, can I make some more offers? Can I give you some more ideas? And if you do have those, those moments where you want to get defensive or shut down, you catch yourself and stop yourself and say, that's not who I want to be. Let me take that and turn the beat around and say something grateful and positive, and that's how you change your neural pathways. You change the way you think, um, so that you're a fountain, really, that people want to be around.
Yeah, I love this metaphor. I would love for us to go a little deeper. How would you describe the ideal relationship or collaboration between director and actor?
Trusting, generous of spirit. I always say they're. I like to. I mean, I kind of got this from the old Globe, where I like to work a lot. It's kind of my artistic home. Um, but before we start every process, we say, make sure you give yourself grace. Give yourself the ability to be wrong, because you can't be perfect, right? If you try to be perfect, you're never going to be good. Like, you're just going to be boring and try to be a machine, and that's not right. People or I mean, it's right. But it's right like a computer's right. It's not right like a human, and it's not interesting to watch. So there's that, and then give everyone else around you grace. Um, Another thing is, all questions are worthwhile. There's you gotta have patience and answer questions, and also know when it's the time not for questions. To say, can we put that in the fridge for now, and we'll get back to it, I promise. uh, and trust that, and assume best intentions. Everyone is there because they want a good show. No one's here to mess you up. Like, no one's here to make your life unhappy. Like, this would be a very low paying way of doing that. Um, like, there's hedge funds and finance and so many miserable professions where you can get paid a lot more and have other rewards. But I think knowing that, reminding yourself of that, and also acknowledging impact, that sometimes there'll be impact that doesn't match the intention, but understanding that people come wanting to do good. Um, and then keeping a sense of play in the play. That's why it's called a play. Like, you gotta be playful. Don't, don't, I mean, be serious about the work, but no, not to take. It's not brain surgery.
Yeah,
We're still
absolutely.
alive.
Absolutely. Um, man, final question that I have for you. It's the question I ask all my guests. It's a little similar to the one I just asked, but I'll explain the caveat, I think. So, what I would love to know is, what is the quality that you look for in actors that you like to work with? And I like to go specifically into the audition room for this question, because kind of what you just described are, like, I asked, like, the ideal collaboration, which is taking place in an audition room where you get to know people and you come
Yeah.
in day after day and get to. But what about that first interaction? What is it? What is
Uh,
it that those actors bring into the room that make you say, "Yeah, I want to work with you"?
what I respond to is humor, intelligence, and kindness. So when you meet people like that, that's someone I'll have a great time with. And if they're smart and thoughtful and have perspective, um,
Yeah.
and humor, then it's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, man, Gordon, it's been such a pleasure getting to meet you. I haven't had many guests at all. Maybe the second, actually, who I didn't know personally beforehand in some capacity. Gordon, where can the people keep up with you? I don't know if, like, your social media is public or not, but
It is. I mean, it's not
great.
like huge. It's just my name, Gordon Greenberg.
All right, folks, at Gordon Greenberg.
Thanks,
Thank you
Hassiem. It
guys.
was
Of
really nice
course,
to meet you.
you as well. To my listeners, thank you for tapping in. Before you go, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and be sure to catch next week's episode of The Actor's Instrument. Till next time, y'all. Peace.
Thank you for listening to The Actor's Instrument. I'm Hassiem Muhammad, and you can follow me at Hassiem Muhammad and the show at Actors Instrument Podcast on all social media platforms. The Actors Instrument is a presentation of Red Letter Entertainment. Executive producers Adam Jellicourse, Serena Esposito, and yours truly. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check us out at theactorsinstrument.com. We'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace.